My name is Scott Spredling. I'm a senior consultant here at Oasis Solutions, and today I'm going to be walking you through how to create your own workflows in NetSuite using NetSuite's workflow suite flow builder. So to start off, all I'm going to do is just show you how to get to a list of your workflows in NetSuite, so you can hover over customization, workflow, and workflows. And this will take us to a list of all the workflows we have currently running in our system, whether they are released or in a testing state or inactive. This is your standard workflow list. Now, the workflow I'm going to be creating for you today is just a simple single state workflow that is going to set a field value on a customer invoice record. So to do that, all you would have to do is go to New Workflow. And from here, we're just going to give our workflow a name. So the intent of this workflow is to default all customer invoice terms to due on receipt. Okay. So I'm going to give it a name that is similar to that. So I'm going to say customer invoices due on receipt. Okay. And I'm also going to give it an ID. This is an internal ID. So I'm going to just kind of give it something a little bit generic, but also kind of gives it a name that a developer would be able to recognize. So again, this is just the internal ID of the record we're creating. Okay, so again, I've given it a name, an internal ID, and now I'm going to define the record type. So in this scenario, this is for a customer invoice. So the record type will be a transaction. Okay, so I can either type in transaction or I can pull my drop-down list. And as you can see, there are several record types that you can use workflow on. In this case, I need it to be a transaction type. And then there are subtypes. Okay, so in this case, this is going to be a customer invoice. So what I'm looking for here is invoice is my subtype. And there it is. So I select invoice. Okay, so essentially what I'm telling the system now is that I am going to create some sort of automation in the system whenever a transaction that is a customer invoice is entered or edited in the system. Okay, my initiation type will be event-based. Okay, so this is not something that I'm scheduling. I want this to run anytime I create or edit an invoice record. Okay, so I'm going to leave the initiation type as event-based. Now, the event definition, as I mentioned before, I want this to run on create or on view or update. Okay, so I'm going to check both of those fields. Okay, and then the trigger type, I want it to be all. However, there are options here where I could have the workflow run before record load, before record submit, or after record submit. It just depends on when specifically you need the workflow to run. In this case, I want it to run on any of those scenarios because I'm just simply setting a value on my field in my customer invoice record. So I'm going to leave that as all. And then you'll also notice down here that the context has basically been pre-selected for us. Okay, and this is basically just what context do I want this automation in my system to run on. So in this case, I want it to run under any context, but I can specify specific scenarios that I would want this workflow to run on. However, in this case, I want all my customer invoices to run this workflow to run on them to where it's setting my due on receipt or my terms to due on receipt anytime an invoice is entered into the system. Okay, so from there, I don't have to do anything to the context here. I can leave them as is. I also don't need to do anything in terms of conditions. I can add custom conditions. For example, if I wanted only customers in the state of Kentucky to have this due on receipt terms, I could specify a condition like that. However, I want this to run across all customer invoice types. Okay. And then some of the last fields up here that we're going to look at. So I want this to run on as released. However, there are release statuses. I could set it in testing. Now, if this was a more complex workflow, I might just put it in testing for now, and then kind of, work through building my workflow and test it. However, this is a simple single state workflow. There's really no need for that. So I'm going to immediately release this. Now, when you're in testing, the workflow will only trigger when the admin or the owner of the workflow triggers it. It will not run for anyone else, and it won't run for any other scenarios. So that's just to give you a little clarity on what the release statuses are. And if you ever have a workflow that's running and you just want to stop it from initiating, you would set it to not initiating. However, in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and release it. It's a simple workflow. So it's fine to just go ahead and set it to be released. And then I also want to track the logging that occurs with my workflow just to make sure that it's running correctly. And so when I start to test this on a customer invoice, when I start to trigger this workflow, I'd like to be able to see the results from the record itself. So that's what keep instance in history is going to do. So I can have it do that only when testing. However, I'm going to set it to have it always run. Okay, that way if the workflow ever bugs out or causes errors, I can easily check the logs and figure out what's going on with the workflow and fix it. So I'm going to enable logging. I'm going to keep instance and history set to always, and then I'm going to give it a description. So the intent of this workflow is to set all customer invoices to due on receipt. Okay, something as simple as that. All you need to enter here is a description, but this makes it easy for someone to look at the workflow and then determine, what the use case is. So once you've done that, you've entered your basic information for the workflow. So from here, I'm just going to hit save, and then it's going to take me to my workflow diagram. Okay. If I had multiple states for a workflow like this, I can add several states and create transitions between all of those states. However, this is not necessary. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of all these states, because again, I only need this one single state. So I can easily just go into this state, go down to actions, and then click delete, and it will remove that state. Okay. So again, you can have multiple states if you have like an approval process where obviously you would have several transition states. Then it's important to have these additional states. However, this is a set field value. It only requires one single state. Okay. And then looking at our diagram, we can see over here to the right, we've got a record type of transaction and specifically running on invoice. We've got our description. We've got a status of released, initiation of event-based, and then events on create, view, or update, and trigger type set to all. So again, as I mentioned, this is just a set field value action. So I can click into my workflow state on my workflow diagram and just double click, and it's going to bring up the detail in this workflow state. So in this scenario, all I want to do is do a new action. And that action is going to be a set field value, okay? Because I'm basically saying that anytime a customer invoice is created, I want the terms to be set to due on receipt. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to set a field value, and then I'm going to scroll up just a little bit so you can see, some of the basic information on this action. Again, what I'm creating here is what's called a workflow action. And again, it's going to trigger on entry, which is what I want. Like as soon as this workflow is initiated, I want this action to occur. Same thing with the context. I want it to run under all these contexts. So finally, the field that I'm setting is the terms field, and I am setting a static value, which means I'm picking a specific value from a pick list. Okay, so when I select static value and I come down here to my selection type, I can set it to due on receipt. Okay. And there's nothing else you need to do in this scenario because, again, it's just a single state workflow. It's a pick list and we're picking one value from it. So there's no condition that I need to add. Nothing else needs to be added here. So I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to hit save one more time. It's going to tell me the record has not changed. Do you really want to submit it? I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to get out of view mode. So now our workflow is in place. It is released. So now let's test the results. So if I go to transactions and then go to sales and then create invoice, I'm just going to select a random customer. Select a location. Again, here's my terms field right here. It's defaulting to due on receipt. Oh, looks like I selected an item that we don't have in stock. So how about I select one that we do? All right, now I'm going to add my item and I'm going to hit save. All right, so as you'll notice, the terms are now set to due on receipt. It's given as a due date of today. Okay, and if I were to go down to system information, workflow history, I could see it has ran. Okay, here's my workflow. If I check my log, I can see that the value was set to the internal ID of 4, which is due on receipt. So again, my workflow has executed. All right. So that's just an example of a very simple, very easy way to just set a field value. You could use this on vendor bills. You could use it on, vendor bill terms, customer terms. And again, this is something that you could use for really any pick list or any freeform text field. You could insert values. It's just a really simple and effective tool to just, populate data into your system when you're creating transactions. So I want to create another workflow for you. This time it's going to be an email notification. So I want to set up an email notification anytime that an opportunity has been set to close one. Okay, so anytime a sales rep has an opportunity that's been set to close one deal, then I want there to be an email notification that, for example, goes to the accounting team. That's also pretty simple to set up, and it's also a single state workflow. So we're going to go back up to customization. We're going to go to workflow, workflows, and new. And so from here, I'm just going to give it a name. And again, I'm going to give it an ID. And then this time I'm going to also an opportunity. This is what it is running on. I'm sorry, the record type is actually opportunity. Okay, so opportunities are technically not transactions. They're found under transactions. However, the record type for opportunity is just opportunities. So you actually wouldn't use a record type of transaction here. So this is going to be event-based again, okay? And it's going to also be on create. And this time I only want it to run on create, okay? I don't want to select to have it run on view or update because I don't want that email going out every time someone views the record or updates it or anything like that. I only want it to run one time and I want it to run on create. Okay, so I'm not going to select on view or update. I want this to run on any scenario. So I'm going to keep my context set as is. Okay, there's no specific condition that I need to run this on. The intent of this workflow is to notify accounting whenever an opportunity has been set to close one. Okay, and that is really all we need in description. I'm going to set this to released as well because, again, it's a single state workflow. It's very simple, so it's fine to just go ahead and release it into production. And then I'm also going to keep instance and history set to always and enable logging. Okay, so from here, I'm going to hit save. All right, and then I'm going to set an action for this workflow to run. And when it runs, I want it to send an email. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. The action we're going to use is send email. Okay, and again, I want it to run on entry. Okay, there's no condition that I need to add. There's no context that I need to add, but I do need to specify a few parameters. All right, so I can say that I want the sender to be a specific user in the system, or I can say I want the sender to be a user from the record itself. So for example, in this case, I could say I want it to be the user. I want this to come from the user of the record who closed the deal. Okay, so it's just, you have options here. It just depends on, the sender, recipient. It just depends on how you want the email to, to basically go out of the system, and who the sender is really, you would determine it using a specific sender, or you can have it be a sender linked to the record. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to say current record, and I want it to be the user of the record. Okay, and then specific recipients, I want this to come to me. Okay, so we're just going to pretend like I'm someone in accounting. So I could say I want it to come to Oasis Scott. However, I could also enter some free form email addresses here if I wanted it to go to maybe a user not in the system, or I could have it go to again, a linked record. Okay, so again, it's just, it's your preference. Using free form addresses, you could put in multiple email addresses here. Okay, and you can also CC employees or other users, or maybe users not in the system. Okay, but in this case, I'm just going to send it to myself. But again, ideally, the recipient here would be the accounting team. All right. If you have a pre-built template, you can use it. Okay. However, we don't have a pre-built template to let folks know when an opportunity is set to close one. So we're going to just create a custom version of that. So we're just going to call, this is the subject line of the email. So I'm going to say notice for closed one opportunity. Okay. And then in the body of the email, we can just start typing in text. Okay. So I could say, greetings. We have closed a new deal. Click link below for details. Something just very simple, very, just easy and simple to set up. So now, this is what the recipient is going to receive, or this is what accounting would receive. We can add in, fields and scripts pulling directly from that record. That's not a part of this demonstration. However, it is possible. In this case, we're just going to include a link to the record. So accounting would receive this notification, and they would click the link, and it would take them to the opportunity that has been set to close one. Okay. You'll also notice there's options here for attachments. We can include attachments. If there are attachments from the record, we can include that. However, none of that is really necessary in this use case. So from there, that's all that needs to happen. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit save again. All right. And now I'm going to go find an opportunity and I'm going to set it to closed won. Okay, so I'm going to go to my list of opportunities. And you'll see I have a lot in here. I am going to set this opportunity here to close won. So I'm going to drill into this opportunity. All right, and now I'm going to just edit this opportunity. And from here, I'm going to set it to closed won. Hit save. Or actually, let me redo that, because this is set to run on create. So actually, I'm going to enter a brand new opportunity. So let me just go create this opportunity. I'll call it test email notice. And then I'll grab my customer. I'm going to use the same one. I'll just use Acme Inc. Say that we don't really need a sales rep. And I'm going to grab an item here. Add. So here's our projected total of our deal. So from here, I could just go ahead and say this is closed won. All right, so now we have a new closed won opportunity. And you'll notice my workflow, my closed won opportunity notice has ran. All right, and again, I am in a demo account. So, you know, again, the emails will only come from me directly. However, it's that simple to set up a, you know, an email notification for a closed won opportunity, or really any other notification for, you know, for any transaction, really. You know, you could use this methodology for. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for your time and have a great day.